Friday, the final day of the week. These are the voyages of the program Unsportsmanlike Conduct. Its ongoing mission to explore strange new movies, to seek out new bits and new edifications, to boldly go where no radio program has gone before. Elkant's Movie Club. It's Elkant's Movie Club. Elkant's Movie Club. It's Elkant's Movie Club.
Kent, how are you doing? How many other things did we get wrong in recapping all those 80s dance movies?
Pretty much all of it.
Okay.
I'm doing well. Big news in my world today. The Ross movie theater here in Lincoln is reopening on the 21st of August.
Really?
So I get to see new movies.
Oh, yeah. Right. That's great. And didn't even need to get the dial into the yellow category to get that thing open. That's nice.
Yeah, that it's a university theater, and I think, you know, once the campus opened up, they're gonna open. So,
now it'll still be independent films,
absolutely,
right?
independent and foreign films. And then if there's nothing else, you know, if the commercial theaters here haven't opened yet, and there's some, you know, the big studios will book films there, but you know, they're at 50% capacity. You got a 98-seat theater, so you're not going to book a film in there that you're going to think you're going to draw more than that. But it's still going to be good to have new movies.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I mean, here we are, we're 5 months into this. Obviously, all the blockbusters got put on hold. We were, the thing that got us into the whole conversation in the first place was that Maverick, the Top Gun sequel. They're holding that back. Was it November that they were going to release that?
Yeah, they may have kicked that to next year again.
Yeah.
They just pushed a whole bunch more of them to next year because the theaters, because LA is such a hot spot, and Texas, they had said, we will not put out any of the bigger releases unless we can play them in New York and LA and Houston, the 5 or 6 biggest markets. Well, you can't play them in LA, so in LA, that pushes them all the way back. So we'll see when that happens. But the independent movies are starting to come out again, and so that'll be a real nice thing for me to spend my Mondays back in the Ross.
Well, we'll look forward to it. We're not going to stop the movie club, though, folks. We're going to keep that going. And this week, V for Vendetta, going back to 2005, starring Natalie Portman. I didn't realize this movie came out in the same year as her last Star Wars film, which was Revenge of the Sith. So she was in 2 big blockbusters in the same year.
Yes.
and in very different roles.
And you know, the guy behind the mask, you know who that was?
I do.
That's Agent Smith, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very good.
Yep.
Well, it was interesting. I'd never seen it before. But basically, and I, as soon as I figured out, you know, where they were going with this, I knew why Stibbs wanted to choose it, because it's a dystopian world, maybe a tyrannical world.
Power to the people, John.
Maybe a world where the leadership is a bit corrupt.
Dear God, there's a lot of similarities that made me freak out.
There were way more than I even remembered. Like, I was just thinking the overall of, like, you know, overarching government that uses their powerful hand and blah blah blah. I forgot, like, there's a pandemic involved.
Oh, yeah.
There's a virus involved. There's like, I was like, oh my God, this is a little too close to home.
I was like,
United States in the throes of a civil war.
Yeah.
I am not in the mental headspace for this movie right now.
And weirdly enough, when it came out, it was criticized for being too over the top because it had made a terrorist a hero, right?
That's
Because
true.
it was 4 years after 9/11. And now it plays almost completely differently today than it did, whatever that be, 15 years ago, simply because it kind of echoes what's going on today. And it was based on graphic novels that were written in the 90s. So somebody was pretty prescient when they put that together. But it just played, I agree with you guys, it played completely different than it did originally, simply because it just echoes of what's going on today.
Did it make it better? Now, you mentioned last week when we selected the film that it made your top 10 list for that year, correct?
Yes.
So
Top
obviously,
20, whatever.
right. So it was obviously one that you liked anyway. Do you like it more seeing it through the lens of today, or do you just like it differently seeing it through the lens of today?
I think probably option B, but I really did like it again. I thought it was a really well done movie, then and now, and then you add those other elements in, and it's like, ooh, this is kind of scary. And of course, early on, they were saying this is not really about England. This is aimed at the George W. Bush administration, right, in America. Well, you compare Bush to what's going on now, and George Bush looks like a screaming liberal,
Well, Stibbs, this was your selection. So
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it again. It was the first time I'd seen it in probably, I don't know, 5-6 years or so. I used to watch it a lot. But I'm with you, Ken. I think it's masterfully done. I think the kind of the way they reveal bits and pieces throughout is perfect timing. The character of V, I love. You never get to see him. He's this mysterious kind of. Like you said, they made a terrorist a hero, and so like you're rooting for him, but at the same time, you're like, man, this guy is not the greatest human in the world. You might agree with what he believes in, but he's taking some very drastic measures to get to what he's trying to do. And I thought the action scenes, although I seem to remember there being more, maybe because they're so cool, they stick out in my mind. There's not a ton of action really, but I think the action scenes with him are phenomenal. His knives and swords and all of his stuff. And then I think the ending is great. There's a lot of really quotable lines kind of regarding the whole thing about, this country needs a hope more than it needs a building and stuff like that. I enjoyed it a lot again. I did. I'm glad I picked it.
The two interesting things to me that really stuck out this time is that you see the story from two perspectives. You see it from hers, from Evie, and from the cop, from Finch. And what those two perspectives come together at the end in a very interesting fashion. And V is kept almost at a distance, which I think helps with that character.
Well, the whole point of that character is to instill hope into people. And with him, like you said, off the distance in that kind of towards the end, it proves that what he did worked. He talked, Evie now believes in what he's done. Even the cop, puts his gun down and is like, you know what, you're right. I'm with him. Like what he was trying to accomplish his whole life, but especially that year that this movie kind of takes place in, that basically proves like, all right, he did it.
And the other thing I looked and it's like, boy, they got a bunch of good actors in this movie. And you've got to assume that Stephen Fry, who played the cop, and John Hurt, who was the whatever he was, prime minister, whatever his job is called, and the
TV show host, I recognize his name,
and also the guy who she stayed with, her boss.
Yeah,
those are all very well-known English character actors, and Stephen Fry is Irish. And you look up a list of the best actors from Ireland, and he's going to be on it. And they wouldn't have taken this movie if it had just been kind of a comic book movie, but because it's got so many of those ideas and the stuff that makes you engage in a different way in it, I'm sure is why they did the movie. And I think that may be why I like the movie so much and still do, is it manages to be both kind of almost a serious movie, if you know what I mean, but also brings in the whole graphic novel part of it, which is a whole different kind of picture.
That's half the reason I picked it too, John, is to trick you into watching a comic book movie, and it worked.
I've watched comic book movies. The Batman movies were great. I like the original Spider-Man movies too, even though Robbie didn't.
Ken, we obviously, I think all of us agree that it aged pretty well and almost
a little too well,
considering current circumstances. Was there anything that upon rewatching this, you're like, I don't really love that, or that doesn't really make a ton of sense now?
Well, the thing that and it sort of got me the first time is that whole, how would he have set up the ruse where she gets taken and she thinks she's gone to prison and she's not really in prison? That didn't ring right with me the first time, and it still doesn't ring exactly. I mean, I get why it's in there, and yeah, if you're, it's a movie, you got to kind of,
suspend belief a little bit.
Suspend some belief. That was the spot where I had to suspend more belief than that, so it stuck out, I guess. And that was the same thing, and it happened twice. It happened original and happened now.
I knew when that was coming again and paid very close attention to kind of that quick scene of where she gets abducted, and tried to watch, like, okay, how do they pull this off? Because the first time you see it, I mean, there's no unless you're extremely, extremely observant, there's no question that you think she's been arrested. So I'm really paying close attention to when she is, and it is hard to believe that I guess it's not hard to believe that he was there. He was everywhere all the time, I guess. But it's a very kind of far-fetched, like, oh, he just happens to be in the front yard and no one saw him and he's dressed exactly the same and blah, blah, blah. And here she is and she never noticed. And the fact that I was paying very close attention to the people talking to her when she was in prison. There's like 5, 6, 7 voices talking to her. And I don't know if that's him. It's got to be him doing voices because he doesn't have any friends and no one knows where he lives or that he's alive. So that was kind of weird too. I remember thinking, like, are we supposed to believe he's just an extremely good impressionist?
There you go. I see. That's all the same things that I kind of hit me on that. That would be one thing, and then the other thing, you could tell visually that it was when it was made a little bit, right? The effects would have been, I don't know if they'd have been a lot different, but they'd have been more, you could tell, insert effect here a few times, right?
Correct, yeah.
Where today it's a little more seamless.
Right, but at the same time, it's kind of nice because, you think of movies in this genre that can kind of go overboard with the special effects. It wasn't distracting for me.
No.
And even at the end, in the scene where he basically takes out all the cops
after getting shot,
it wasn't, it was obviously done in slow motion, but it wasn't like it wasn't overly produced in my view, and thus to me, it was actually a better scene because of that.
The best movies in that era, in my opinion, that use CGI in like action, knew the limitations and kind of mastered the scenes around what they're able to do. So like when he throws like his knives, they know they're not going to make it look exactly like knives being thrown full speed across. So on purpose, they slow-mo it. They kind of give it that like tail of like wind on purpose. Like they make it look kind of comic-y so that you're not like, wow, that doesn't look real. It's supposed to not look real in your mind. It kind of plays a trick on your mind. I'm with you, John. You're right, Kent, that it's not like the special effects aren't as good, but I didn't really think about it at all because they did a great job at hiding it and kind of making the scenes around what they were able to do.
The other thing that hit me, going back to, do you see something different? There's a lot of aspects of Phantom of the Opera in this.
Yeah.
From the masked guy to the relationship where is he kidnapping her, is he not, all of that. got folded into this. I didn't notice it until yesterday when I watched the movie. I went, well, that's Phantom of the Opera. It may have something to do with the fact I saw Phantom of the Opera last year.
It wouldn't surprise me if that's on purpose, with as much as they call back to those old, the Count of Monte Cristo is obviously part of it. I mean, there's numerous pop culture references of that, of former eras. It wouldn't surprise me at all if that was on purpose.
And I should have said, when you talked about the slow-mo effects and all that, this movie was produced by how you say their name, Wachowski?
Oh, the Matrix people. Yeah.
People that did the Matrix.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is how Hugo Weaving ended up in it, I'm sure. But they did the Matrix. This was the first movie they did after the Matrix series. So if you think of the Matrix effects and these effects, they're quite similar.
Yes, they are. No, that's true. So there it is. There's V for Vendetta, this week's film. Josh, who will be back next week, and I will be off on vacation. Josh has selected Being John Malkovich.
Excellent.
I haven't seen this one. I'm
already
excited.
happy, so I'm looking forward to the review.
I saw when I got on Netflix to watch that. Being John Malkovich was the thing that came up, and I thought I might just have to watch that movie for fun. Now I have an excuse.
Now you got an excuse. And you're going to have to pry yourself away from that hot and heavy battle for 8th place in the Western Conference, which is all of a sudden got very tight between, 6 teams now, right?
Yep, there's 6 teams that go, and then the playoffs begin.
I
think the playoffs may actually be, are they underway next Friday?
Well, there's 4 games left in the play-in,
Ravi,
right?
That's on you.
Yeah, I think it's either next Friday or it's next weekend.
Friday
I believe.
or Saturday.
Games left. Yeah.
Yeah. And yet the Pelicans, who are within
2.5,
within a cat hair of being in the playoffs, are going to sit Zion tonight,
which is I don't get it, but hey,
he's been sitting out for 5 months.
Right, and you're not going to, I mean, they got 4 games. I don't think they're going to make it. So they got 4 games left. How are you going to, for them to make it, they'd have to win out, and then all kinds of stuff would have to happen before they got in there, I think.
Yeah. All right, Kent. Well, we'll let you enjoy the basketball, and next week, Josh and Stibbs and you will go over Being John Malkovich.
Sounds great.
See you, Kent.
Bye, Kent. Thank you.
Kent Wolgamott of the Lincoln Journal-Star.
and me, John. I'll be here too.
Oh, that's jeez, I'm sorry. Yes, Robbie will be here too.
So will I.
He said you.
I said you and Stibbs. For
I
some
know.
reason, I
Pretending
wasn't sure what the whole fill-in schedule was next
pretending
week.
like I'm not here. That's fine.
No, I'm not
That's okay.
pretending you aren't here.
All right.
Coming up next, Stibbs and I are going to talk about we have Dr. Mark Rupp coming up. We're going to let's take a quick break right now, so then we can get to Mitch's practice report. After Mitch's practice report, Dr. Mark Rupp of UNMC will join us. So stay right there. A lot to come on 1620 The Zone.